Hi. Indo-Pak is waning from the headlines, and I guess understandably so. But the events from May 6th onwards have left more questions than answers. In fact, we've got a lot of them from you, about 300 plus across our DMs, messages, and comments. So here's an attempt at answering some of them. We are going to timestamp this video in the caption because it's a long one, so you can go to the parts that you are most interested in. First, all about the ceasefire. The questions are, is it holding? Why didn't we retaliate? Why didn't we retaliate when news of drones came in soon after the Prime Minister's address? And many other questions in the same space. Let's attempt to answer. First, the ceasefire as it exists currently is fragile. Also note that the word ceasefire has not appeared in any briefings either by the armed forces or the MEA when it comes to the current situation. They have said this agreement, this understanding, a pause, a cessation of hostilities, to underline this very aspect that this situation is fragile. It could turn. We are waiting and watching. Now, for context, India and Pakistan have or had a ceasefire agreement from February 2021 that governs all military action, including along the line of control and the international border. It has been tested many times before, even before Pahalgam. In fact, from January to early April this year alone, there were around 15 documented ceasefire violations by Pakistan, resulting in 13 civilian deaths along the line of control. When the DGMO spoke for the first time on May 10th afternoon, both sides reached an understanding to stop all firing on land, air, and sea. That was violated repeatedly, even on the 9th of May 10th, hours after the announcement became public. In fact, late that night, if you remember, India had to release a statement calling out this breach of understanding. Now, this situation is different, but it's not as if India expected the skies to go silent suddenly. In fact, as many of you have mentioned, shortly after the Prime Minister's address too, there were reports of drones in Jammu that India remained somewhat silent and stoic about. The reason for that, a combination of factors. Number one, pause orders move through some layers of caution and interpretation, though strict observance is mandated, so it should not have happened. Two, there is an operational threshold which the army assessed and said the situation is calm and under control, unquote. Meaning that this burst doesn't possibly warrant a response or a retaliation. Number three, of course, if it crosses that threshold that the forces have, then all bets are off. One more way of seeing it is the Pak army showing its bluster. Net, it's fragile. And this statement by the DGMOs is what we have, that both sides have agreed that no aggressive or hostile actions will be initiated. Now, many of you have been curious about DGMO talks, DGMO hotline, etc. The DGMO, as you know, stands for Director General of Military Operations. You know who the DGMO is, Lieutenant General Rajiv Ghai, who's addressed the press conference multiple times. He is the officer responsible to coordinate military operations of the Indian Army, along with the Indian Air Force and the Indian Navy counterparts. He was pivotal to the coordination of Operation Sindoor and thus was seen leading the military press briefings. The DGMO is a senior officer, a 3-star rank general and equivalent really to the secretary in the MEA. He's empowered to engage on all military matters with his Pakistani counterpart. He, being in charge of the operations, is therefore the right person to announce that understanding, that ceasefire, that pause. The DGMO has a hotline with his Pakistan counterpart. It has existed even before. They generally speak every Tuesday or when required. Why? Well, this is a confidence building measure to really avoid escalation and to follow upon the agreement when it is made. The agreement is then informed to the chiefs and passed down to the troops who are in contact at the border for strict observance. Now, the talks between DGMO were as per existing protocol and don't happen without the political mandate. But there is nothing amiss here in the DGMO making these announcements.
Let's talk about the convoluted part, the announcement of this pause. We know publicly it first came from the United States, a Trump tweet, who said that both countries had agreed to a full and immediate ceasefire. Since then, he has gone on to mention US help, mediation, trade as an incentive, trade as a threat, dinner for both sides, and more. Let's leave that aside for a second and build out a chronology of who called whom asking for truce. So, on the intervening night of May 6th 7th, India struck inside Pakistan and POK, hitting terror infrastructure. After this strike, India approached Islamabad. The DGMO said, I quote him, "We explained our compulsions to strike at the heart of terror. If more was said by India, we are not aware at this point." Pakistan responded to that, and again, I quote our DGMO, they brusquely turned down with an intimation that a severe response was inevitable and in the offing. After that, the situation escalated with Pakistan sending drones and attacking Indian civilian and military installations. India responded hard. Many experts and India maintain that the actions on Pak military infrastructure made Islamabad blink. Pakistan then reached out to intermediaries, including the US. US called India and Pakistan. Pakistan then called India. Then the first DGMO talks happened.
So, India denies any direct mediation, US, Saudi, or otherwise. Pakistan, unsurprisingly, highlights the US role. President Trump's relentless tweets and comments have made this worse. Needless to say, for India, this is uncomfortable for many, many reasons. Number one, the US president's claim makes the ceasefire look less like a military outcome and more like external pressure. Two, India has always drawn a red line against third-party involvement when it comes to Kashmir. In fact, this principle codified after the 1971 war and reiterated through numerous conflicts, Kargil, what happened in Parliament, Mumbai, Uri, and Pulwama. Number three, with President Trump's tweets and comments in the mix, all of this looks less like diplomacy and more like two schoolboys being told to behave. Number four, for India, which has always wanted to dehyphenate or delink Pakistan, this image is problematic. So yes, as the US media widely reported that Vice President J.D. Vance and Senator Marco Rubio have made calls and warned both sides that this was escalating, India's stand is that its hard attack at the military infrastructure in Pakistan forced Islamabad to make that call. Now, some of that hard attack has thrown up the end questions or questions related to nuclear infrastructure. Did we hit? Did we cause damage? Did we come close? Let's tell you what we know and what we may never know. On the night of May 10th, the Indian Air Force launched coordinated strikes on 11 Pakistani air bases. This is confirmed. Among them was Noor Khan Air Base in Rawalpindi, less than 10 kilometers from Islamabad. Confirmed. Close to the military headquarters, also close to the Strategic Plans Division, the body that guards Pakistan's nuclear assets. Another base that was hit was Sargodha. It houses the Mushaf Air Base used for nuclear-capable aircraft. It is near Kirana Hills, a nuclear weapons storage site. Did India target Pakistan's nuclear infrastructure? No, says the Indian Air Force with a smile. About Kirana Hills, Air Marshal A.K. Bharti said, "We neither knew what was there, nor did we target it." So India is maintaining that its military operation remained entirely in the conventional domain, which means non-nuclear. In fact, Pakistan's foreign minister too has said that the nuclear question was never on the table, never mind what their media was reporting. Now, there are 2-3 bits of information that run counter to this or perhaps help us understand the situation. Number one is CNN reports of the US having what it called alarming intelligence about a possible dramatic escalation, which is when the call was made to Prime Minister Modi. And number two, Donald Trump talking about preventing a bad nuclear war. In fact, his statement was left untouched by India. But remember, the Prime Minister, when he addressed the nation, mentioned zero tolerance for nuclear blackmail or terrorism that happens under its cover. Now, what is clear here is this. Even if conventional assets were hit, the proximity to nuclear infrastructure is unmistakable. Air Marshal Bharti described the strikes on Noor Khan and Sargodha as strategic messaging, and that message was possibly received. Let's also be extremely clear, there's no proof of any nuclear event. There is no radioactive leak that has been confirmed. In fact, India's very own National Center for Seismology has ruled out an earthquake that was linked to a test. I'm sure there are many more military and diplomatic questions, possibly on the extent of damage, etc., that have been left unanswered. We'll try and tackle that separately.
I want to cover one more frequent question. Where are the Pahalgam terrorists? You are right, that has slipped from public memory. All 5 terror suspects are still on the run, 22 days on. The 3 are Pakistani nationals, 2 are Kashmiri locals. The National Investigation Agency, or the NIA, has taken over the probe. There is digital evidence, intercepted calls, and the trail of cross-border planning, India's rationale for the May 6th strikes. The NIA has spoken to eyewitnesses and locals and collected forensic evidence. There is a cache of photographs and videos clicked by tourists and others on the fateful day. NIA investigations have traced links back to a Sheikh Sajjad Gul, a 50-year-old Kashmiri, long designated a terrorist. He heads Lashkar's proxy group, the Resistance Front. The NIA has said that he masterminded the Pahalgam attack from Rawalpindi under the protection of the Lashkar-e-Taiba. When it comes to questions on what steps are being taken to address security lapses that allowed Pahalgam to happen, not much in the public domain, as is often the case. A review, increased patrols, but many are asking for increased scrutiny. Why prior warnings about attacks on tourists near Srinagar didn't trigger security across all tourist hubs, and why the government's admissions about security lapses aren't louder, more public. The spectacle of war took over much else, but there is absolute merit in continuing to follow this, and we'll do the same at Newsworthy. If you have stayed so far, thanks for watching.